Hi everyone, this is Justin Kramer with ProShip. We're going to give it about 3 minutes here to allow our attendees to come in. So at about 3 minutes after the hour, we will actually start the presentation. I will say for those of you who are waiting, if you do have additional questions, please feel free to enter them. Also, now's a good time to look at the handouts that we have available for you as well. And for those of you who have joined us a little bit late, we're going to give it 1 more minute as people continue to join before we start the webinar. All right. Good morning to all my Pacific and Mountain Time friends, and good afternoon to all of my Central and East Coast friends. We're about to go ahead and start the webinar now. Let's go ahead and move forward here. So just some housekeeping first. Please note there is no call-in number here. We are expecting that everybody would be using their PC speakers, headphones, something of that nature. So just again, we expect that you're using your computer, or if you are seeing this online, your phone, the direct audio from your phone to listen to this. The whole thing is being recorded, so you'll get a link to this afterwards, so you'll be able to review everything. But so that you can come back and review something that maybe we didn't look at in enough detail. Again, we had many questions submitted. We picked some of the best ones here for our conversation. If you do have any questions, though, we do have one of our team members actually managing the Q&A portion on the application itself, so feel free to add more questions. We've tried to make this so we leave some time at the end for any real-time questions to occur. And there should be a handout section on your screen. I did mention it right at the very top of the broadcast too. So feel free to look at that and download those resources at your leisure. All right, with that, let's go ahead and do some introductions. I'm Justin Kramer, the Director of Sales Engineering at ProShip, and also one of the co-founders. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Tim Huckey, been working with ProShip for about 7 years now as a solutions expert. So I manage our central territory and also work with some of our enterprise retailers, e-commerce players, manufacturers, etc. So happy to be here and answer some questions.
Thanks, Tim. Tim and I have worked together for a long time here, so we'll probably keep this this a little conversational. But let's go ahead and let's kick off. All right. So this question is interested in learning new approaches to TMS selection and what the most relevant part of a TMS is. Okay, I want to point something out here. I'm going to throw it over to Tim to start answering some of this question. But first things first, we do like to qualify. Number one, TMS is a rather ill-defined section within the enterprise software stack. So we like to break it out into 2 parts: truckload TMS and a small parcel TMS. So Tim, if you could dig deeper into that, talk to us about what you feel the differences are. Let's talk about those TMS components.
Yeah, I mean, in most of the conversations that I'm having, especially early on with prospects who are trying to understand kind of what functionality they're looking for, there's really, I would say, almost 3 sectors that have cross functionality, and that's your warehouse management systems, your transportation management systems, and what I would consider, which is what ProShip is, a multi-carrier shipping solution. That's your multi-carrier shipping solutions are a little bit more focused on small parcel rating, rate shopping, shipment execution. We all kind of know what the warehouse management systems are doing, and then the transportation management systems, Justin, is exactly kind of what you pointed out. They're very good at LTL, truckload, route optimization, load planning, et cetera, which isn't necessarily a focus of multi-carrier shipping solutions. So, you know, when the question is what is the most relevant part of a TMS, it really depends on you as a prospect, as a consumer. What are you looking for? Are you looking for something to handle your larger goods, your LTL shipments, your truckload shipments, et cetera? Are you looking for something to just do rate shopping and rate shopping in small parcel carriers or LTL carriers and just getting a label or a pallet tag and the appropriate documentation? If you're looking that route, I would say that multi-carrier shipping solutions would probably be a better fit for you than TMS. What we're seeing in the market today is WMSs and TMSs do a lot of functionality, and they do certain parts very well. But because they're so spread thin across the business, sometimes they fall short in certain areas. And rating, rate shopping, and shipment execution, specifically to parcel, may be one of those. So it's interesting, Justin, because what we're seeing with some of the major WMSs is they're starting to turn a little bit more. I think at one point they were deploying their own parcel shipping solutions, trying to keep up in that market. And what we're actually seeing is they're now turning to solutions like ProShip, other multi-carrier shipping solutions to partner with to deploy for their customers. So I'm very interested to see within the next year or two if transportation management systems actually start to do the same, where they do very good at the LTL and truckload and then partner with someone who does parcel very well. So we've got customers that do both or have both systems, a transportation management system and a multi-carrier shipping solution. And we've also seen prospects who have chosen a TMS and then have circled back to a multi-carrier shipping solution to handle that parcel. So again, kind of a long-winded answer, but like I said, I think it's very important to have a narrow focus on what exactly you're looking for out of that solution, whether that be a TMS or a multi-carrier shipping solution. Justin, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I do. I want to point out, especially for the truck TMS style solutions, which you're accurate. We do have a lot of those out there where they're reaching out to us. We're working with them to try to enhance their parcel execution capability and their parcel planning capability. One of the big differences is load planning, route planning, basically things that you would do specifically with truckload or less than truckload shipments. Okay. And of course, what we refer to ourselves as is a more of a small parcel TMS. We are looking at individual shipments that are being executed from wherever within your enterprise, whether that be a store, whether that be your own warehouses, whether that be the manufacturers that you're subcontracting with or 3PLs that you're subcontracting with. And I will also reiterate that there is a lot of interest out there. I myself in this year have spoken with the TMS people at Manhattan, TMS people at Mercury Gate to talk about how we can do things that make the all that planning capability reach out to small parcel as well, and of course allow execution to occur at the same time. All right, let's move on to the first question, or to the second question here. And by the way, these questions, with the exception of maybe some spelling corrections and things of that nature, we did not alter these questions at all. So they may be, we may alter them in the way we answer them, but these are the questions as they were submitted by many of our listeners today. So how do you invoke business rules logic to block commercial, non-residential shipments as offices are being closed across the country? And any other trends you're seeing and advice you have for supply chains dealing with the pandemic? This is a great question. And this is a question that honestly, the second question, the answer changes on this almost on a daily basis. So when we look at business rules and logic blocking, I will say there's a prerequisite here, okay, that we don't, that something like a shipping software can assist, but we don't think you should be doing this at the shipping station. And that is making sure you've got clean, validated addresses, specifically with the RDI or residential delivery indicator, right? Because if you do want to put a business rule in place, whether you are executing from a rich client at end of line, whether you are executing with a scan, weigh, print, and apply, or Panda, some people call them, tunnel, so you have more black box, or maybe you're doing wave shipping from within your WMS, and you have that connected black box to a small parcel shipping system. With all of those, a lot of this comes down to a simple business rule, but you also have to ask yourself, what am I going to do if I do have clean data? We have a business rule that we're not delivering to commercial addresses, only to residential addresses. What do you want done with that shipment? So this is something that any good small parcel shipping system should be able to put in as a business rule, should be a relatively quick business rule, but we do caution our customers to make sure that they understand what the results of this is going to be, especially if you're dealing with end of line shipping or something like a Panda. If you are doing front of line wave shipping, of course we could just cancel that shipment and the WMS can sort those out as unserviceable for now. But most of our customers are not doing front of line. Most of what we see are not doing front of line. They're doing that end of line or that automated pack. So so there might be some requirement. Again, clean your data as soon as it comes into the entire enterprise software suite. That might be something you could also block in the WMS or OMS itself. And of course, many small parcel shipping softwares do offer a specific API to allow you to do that address cleansing. So please make sure you're checking with your vendor, whether it's us or somebody else, checking with your vendor and leveraging that address validation with RDI, residential delivery indicator capability, so that somewhere in your enterprise software stack you can stop those. I would recommend doing it as far forward as possible. However, if that's more difficult, let's face it, one of the advantages to most small parcel shipping software is we have a tendency to be able to react very quickly, make quicker rules. It's a lot easier to validate those rules than to put those maybe in your WMS or your OMS, which may have significantly more difficult validation processes. Tim, before I move on to the pandemic changes here, did you have some comments on that one too?
Yeah, Justin, I just think maybe we should touch on as well. I'm seeing carriers make updates every single day. Obviously, we're very close to the carriers. We've got great relationships there. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what they're able to provide us and why business rules are so important because of the lack of information they're able to provide us in a timely manner?
That's a great point. So one of the things we've all seen already, especially those of you who are paying attention to the logistics world, the major carriers have eliminated their time and transit guarantees. Okay, so now they're basically just guidelines. So far, everything I've seen is they are pretty much delivering to those guidelines. I think this is just preemptive because they're not sure if their drivers are going to be called out, if they may, if they may have to be quarantined, if they may actually truly get sick. Let's hope not. But that's something that is changing. And then we're also starting to see, especially your international carriers, that are actually eliminating countries that they will deliver to internationally. Okay, now some of that might be because those countries have said, hey, nothing comes in and out of us until this quarantine stuff is over, but that's what we're seeing. However, even though the carriers have the ability to send us a routing file that would actually say that this country or this country district, this country province, this country state is no longer deliverable, they're not doing that right now. And where our customers who do have heavy international shipping are dealing with that is they are coming to their small parcel shipping software vendors, and they're actually asking us to quickly put in business rules so that they can say this ISO code is completely eliminated, or this ISO code with these postal codes have been eliminated, so on and so forth. So that ability to watch and make changes, again, of course, if you can do this further upstream, just to stop the ability to take orders or process your orders, whether that be in the OMS, the ERP, or the WMS. That's also possible as well. And if you are waiving your shipments, maybe you waive by country, you can handle it that way as well. So I'm not saying you have to make business rule changes. What we're saying is that it is often easier to make a business rule change in the shipping software in order to help make those changes take effect, given the flexibility of small parcel shipping software.
Yeah, Justin, that's a really good segue to kind of into that second question. In regards to strategic conversations, business rules we're putting in place for our customers. First off, we just want to extend our hand to all of our customers, partners, and prospects, and let them know that, ProShip's here for those discussions. We've already been part of a lot of those strategic discussions already with some customers, and, we're all hands on deck, happy to help our customers make any changes to their business in regards to dealing with what's going on in the world today. So please don't hesitate to reach out, whether that's, to a sales rep or to directly with your account manager. Like I said, we're here to help and be a part of those conversations. So with that being said, Justin, I'll start on that second question and allow you to kind of add some more color to that. So in regards to kind of what we're seeing out there today, it really depends on the segment that our shippers are in, whether that's manufacturing, retailers, e-commerce, etc. What we're seeing a lot with retailers specifically is a lot of ship from store, and being able to, although those stores are shutting down, as they practice their social distancing and different things like that, they still want to utilize those stores as mini fulfillment centers. And we're seeing a lot of major retailers go forward with that plan to get inventory out of those stores and to their customers in a timely manner. But we're also seeing a lot of people who don't have that infrastructure in place very interested in making that turn now to get some type of solution in place within those stores in order to get that inventory out and get it, like I said, to those end users in a timely manner, as opposed to going from a DC all the way to a region where the DC is not really close to. So that's one of the major changes that we're seeing. One of the other things that we're seeing quite a bit of is there's a lot of DCs that are being shut down across the country as well, regions that are being hit hard and DCs that are being understaffed. So having the ability to do line hauls and different things like that, whether that be doing a line haul from the southern portion of the state, whether that's Texas or Louisiana or something like that, and doing a line haul all the way to, Pure Later to get to your Canadian customers. We're seeing people take their parcels, do a line haul, inject it directly into a carrier hub in order to reach their customers. So just being able to be flexible with your shipping and, deal with all the changes that are happening and the shutdowns that are happening is extremely important. And then I would say just the last final thought that I have on the whole thing is, e-commerce was already taking over the past year or two. Everybody's kind of making that change from the brick and mortar stores to e-commerce. And I'm just really curious to see where we are post-pandemic with this whole thing. Is this really going to kind of be the start of the end of brick and mortar stores? I don't know if we can make that claim right now, but it's going to be interesting to see how many people are investing now and are going to invest later after this pandemic.
So, and to add to that, let's cover a couple of things that are very clear out there. Governors are making decisions on whether or not particular locations are capable of being used anymore. I've heard of enclosed malls being completely shut down, meaning you can't even use them as origin sources. However, external malls, strip malls, things of that nature still have a tendency to be available because they provide for the social distancing prior to entering the store. But the biggest trend that we're seeing right now really does come down to what Tim was saying, and that is it's amazing the number of customers who have not activated all of their potential inventory sources. Either they're not shipping from store, they do not have direct relationships with manufacturers to drop ship from those manufacturers, or they do not have 3PLs set up. Most of what we're seeing right now, most of the requests that we're seeing from customers as well as OMS partners, is we are seeing customers who are looking to rapidly deploy ship from store such that they can mobilize that abandoned stock, which is especially for fashion retailers, is, the longer that's immobilized, the less it is worth, and the sooner it has to actually be discontinued, the season's over, things of that nature. So if there's one big thing we're seeing, it is how quickly many companies can move to put some level of ship from store in place to mobilize that inventory and reduce the sitting costs of all those goods. And again, though, we are seeing that this is not uniform across North America, that it depends upon what type of business they're in and where that business actually sits. If you're sitting inside of a traditional enclosed mall, that inventory may be completely off limits to you no matter what. If you are sitting in a standalone store, a strip mall, or one of the more multi-use outdoor type malls that we see now, all the rage, those inventories have a tendency to be significantly easier to make mobile. So that's kind of what we're seeing. All right. So moving on to the next question. Can ProShip configure multiple UPS engines? This one is very ProShip specific. I'm going to answer it rather generally, though that generalness is towards ProShip. Basically, this question is asking, can we go ahead and return book rates, negotiated rates, and yet a third set of rates, which usually is for somebody who's doing B2B or somebody who's doing charging their customers shipping rates. So the book rates, that's your undiscounted rate from UPS. So we know what they would charge if you just had a normal daily pickup. There's the negotiated rates, which are the actual rates that you as a shipper are going to pay. And then that third rate is often the rate you want to present to your customer. Okay. And if you think about it that way, and Tim, I'm gonna take the first whack at this, unless you want to throw something in before I get too deep.
No, go ahead.
All right. So that first rate, your small parcel shipping software should always have book rates or those daily pickup rates included in their solution. Okay. So that should just be a hard yes for any shipping software. Negotiated rates, again, this should be a yes. How you get those negotiated rates into the system is going to change, and we'll talk about premise engines versus API engines in the future. So again, for every small parcel shipping software out there, that should be a big yes. You should be able to get those book rates. You should be able to get your actual rate for every shipment with every transaction. Okay. Now the third one comes down to, again, assuming I'm interpreting this question right, a rate we want to show our customers, maybe in a cart, maybe just a rate we're going to charge them later based on the actual freight, so on and so forth. This type of stuff, we often recommend to our customers that the rate they show their customer is based off of one of the other two ones we've already talked about. So you're taking that book rate and you are, based on volume, loyalty, whatever the case may be, you are reducing that price from book based upon thresholds, based upon percentages, based upon whatever that might be. As for the other method is it's taking your rate and saying, okay, well, we're going to charge you 20% over top of our rate, and that will help us to fund our logistics program, so on and so forth. So you can take those two rates and through, I like to say, simple algebra, go ahead and manipulate those starting rates to determine how you're going to charge your customer. Okay, this can be done in the shipping software. This can be done in the WMS. This can be done in an OMS, or this can be done in the e-commerce suite, because any of those can be connected to the small parcel shipping software. What I would say I don't recommend, though it is possible, but I would say it's not a good practice, is you could spin up another fictitious account and you could set a new set of negotiated rates that would be that customer's rates. It's physically possible in most small parcel shipping software, but it's not a good idea. It does end up having maintenance problems going down the road, and so we always recommend start with those first two sets of rates, and you can, for customer A, you can take book and negotiate and give discounts off of that. For customer B, you can take your rate and put fees on top of that. So, and it could switch for every single customer. So it's one of those things where as long as you can identify, as long as you can define that algebraic equation you want to use, and we can give names to them, you can switch back and forth for every shipment based upon the customer. Again, some type of whether they are a certain loyalty level, things of that nature. So the answer is yes to all of these. The key though is in the details of the how for each of these. Okay, Tim, did you see anything you wanted to add to that at all? I know that was a more technical and related one.
No, the one thing I'll just say is, just to answer the first question quite plainly, is it would be a single UPS engine. It's just the way that the rate cards are set up within that engine. So we wouldn't configure multiple engines, just being a little ProShip specific. It would be one UPS engine with different rate cards set up. And then just from a real life perspective, I get customers who ask this quite a bit, specifically for those customer service reps who are taking orders over the phone and quoting shipping on the phone. There's a lot of times where I have customers who are asking us to hide the discounted rates, to hide the book rates, and that they just want to let their customer service rep see what that selling price is. And we do that quite a bit for our customers so that they're not confused by looking at different rates. They have one rate that they're looking at, and this is going to be our selling rate to that customer. So we can definitely configure it that way, as well as in the cart, like you explained before, Justin. And I think you hit it right on the head, where we've seen people deploy this very complex, and we've seen people deploy it very simply. And one thing to note is just the more complex it gets, the bigger challenge it is to manage it, maintain it, and support it. So we always advise our customers to just try and keep that calculation as simple as possible going forward. So
couldn't agree more. All right, next question. What are the sweet spots for each carrier? Okay, now this is a difficult question for us. Please understand that good multi-carrier shipping software should be neutral. We are not pulling for any particular carrier. We are pulling for you, the customer, okay? And what we mean by that is we have rate shopping capabilities, time and transit shopping capabilities, extended rate shopping capabilities for very unique positions. And so to us, it's all about handling that shipment the best way we can to meet or exceed your customer's expectation while actively respecting your requirements for the carriers that you're using. Okay, so instead, I want to make sure that everybody is looking at particular things within their carriers, because we do have customers that only use a single carrier, yet they're rate shopping within those carriers. They're doing so many things for them that it's that they're saving a large amount of money. And Tim, you may talk about that a little bit later, but let's make sure you're looking at the fact that carriers have traditionally always offered express and ground services. Okay, you also now have postal last mile services from the carriers. So you basically have three modes within the carriers themselves, and that's for the major carriers. You also have to consider the fact that depending upon where your customer is and where your warehouse is, you may also want to include regional carriers, because they may have better time in transits and better cost structures as well. And finally, since we are looking at modes here, we want to look at LTL carriers. So depending upon where the size of your parcel, you may be using postal services less than 1 pound. You may be using postal services greater than 1 pound. Again, they could be from the carrier, from the United States Post Office directly, or they could be coming through your major carriers, UPS and FedEx, or DHL. And there are other postal aggregators and forwarders and expediters out there as well that you could be using. For your larger packages, you're probably looking maybe at still maybe a postal last mile solution, but you're probably looking at ground or express with that. Now, as you start to look at those things, you want to compare between the carriers for services. Now, if you have decided as a company that you want to exclude, XYZ LTL from delivering to Wyoming, okay, no idea why you might want to do that. Again, it should be easy for you to work with your small parcel shipping software provider to actually be able to set up a table to eliminate that. Maybe it's going to be by zip code, maybe it's going to be by entire state, okay? But again, that's an area where we like to use business rules to enhance. You can also, at least in our case, you can use best way groups so that when you are looking at something that's a particular mode, you are looking only at the relevant services. So you could have a heavyweight best way group. That might include ground, it might include express. Probably that express one probably is never going to win because it's going to be, traditional express is going to be extremely expensive. But you could be using carrier freight express and carrier freight non-express to compare those as well. So if you have UPS 100 weight, FedEx multi-weight, things of that nature, by doing that rate shopping only for the services you want to include for that type of shipment, you can ensure that you get the lowest cost there. So again, I know this one was more, hey, who has better delivery, ground, this, that, and the other thing. The reality is year after year, there are a ton of analytics firms that go ahead and say how the carriers perform. Both UPS and FedEx always come in around 97%. I do recommend that if you are looking for more specifics like that, small parcel carriers software usually has a partnership with an audit firm, somebody who is gathering that aggregate data, somebody who can actually give you advice on particular lanes, and having those good partnerships like ProShip has should be able to help feed information back into the system so that the system will automatically eliminate certain routes based upon the data feeds that we get back from those audit firms. Tim, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Justin, you brought up a lot of different service types and different things like that, which is us kind of altering the question a little bit just to stay agnostic. But I mean, I think this goes back to the first question, which is why are you purchasing a TMS or a multi-carrier solution? What are your specific needs out of that system? And I just think that this question kind of goes back to, our prospects and the end users who are looking to use those systems to make sure they're doing their due diligence. Because, I get a lot of questions from people who are looking at very specific services, for FedEx, IPD, IGD, for UPS, ground freight pricing, different things like that. Just make sure that the vendor you select can provide all of those specialty services, consolidation services, et cetera. Because, typically they're very important to your business. You guys have already calculated the savings you get from that system, and they're not very easy to deploy. So, if specific service types are what you're looking for, like I said, just make sure you're doing your due diligence on the front end. And then the last thing I'll say is in staying carrier agnostic and talking about sweet spots is I think that's the beauty of going with a multi-carrier shipping solution in order to handle that for you. Although we won't speak on, who does what better or what carrier does a certain region better. What we will say is that it's part of our software. So, we've had large retailers in the past who have come to us and say, hey, you guys shipped a bunch of things, express services, and it could have made it their ground. And, once we dive in and do our due diligence, it's a sweet spot. And the express services were actually cheaper for them than the ground services. So that's the beauty of using a solution, a multi-carrier shipping solution is, we can definitely attack those sweet spots and at the end of the day, save our customers money. So.
All right, let's keep it moving. We're just a little behind schedule here. All right, next question. What is the difference between a multi-carrier shipping software that utilizes carrier APIs versus one that uses on-premise engines? And amazingly, we did not pay somebody to put this question in here.
Justin, why don't I start with this question? I'll talk about it a little bit more high level, and then you might be able to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the technical weeds. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So in regards to APIs versus engines, first off, I just want to explain APIs, very little maintenance, usually a lot easier to set up. What we see is they handle some lower volume, some lower throughput very well. So for some people, for some customers, it makes a lot of sense for them to utilize APIs, especially those businesses who are just getting started, the volume's just starting to flow, et cetera. But one thing that's different, our customers and some larger customers who are looking for that throughput, looking for that reliability, we kind of sell our software off of three things. Speed, compliance, and support has been kind of our main mantra for a long time. And equating that back to the carrier engines versus the APIs, in regards to speed, if you have engines, you're not leaving your infrastructure, going through an API to go get rates and go get labels. That allows our customers to rate shop a bunch of different carriers, a bunch of different carrier services, and get labels back and get rate shop results sub-second, which is so important to our customers. We've even had a few prospects in 2019 that ended up selecting ProShip because they monitored those web services during peak times and saw that during peak times, those APIs can tend to slow down because everybody's putting a lot of throughput through that API. And there's also a lot of downtime that can happen to those APIs as well. So again, it's just something to monitor, something to think about. If speed is something that you're really interested in, you should definitely look at a solution that provides engines as well. And then the two other points that go with that, compliance and support. Surprisingly, a lot of the carrier APIs don't always offer some of those specialty consolidation services that we talked about earlier, Justin. So if those are the types of things you're looking for, just make sure that the vendor that you select can provide you with those different services. Because like I said, having an engine, you have a lot more flexibility in order to add different services, maintain different services, as opposed to waiting on a carrier to add a specific service through the API. So it's something to think about. And then just from our customers' perspective, from a support perspective, the more that ProShip can control is important for our customers, because we can't really point the finger at an API or an underlying piece of software that we don't control that we're having issues with. So, speed, compliance is a huge thing, but I would say support's probably the biggest. Our customers like the fact that if they have a shipping problem, it's ProShip's problem, and they can get to a resource that really can control and fix those issues. So, Justin, I know that's a little high level. Anything to add to that from a deeper technical perspective?
Well, and I want to extend what you were talking about with control, and that's where a lot of our customers start to look at this. Is even if you've outsourced, you've put your entire enterprise software stack in Azure or in Amazon Web Services, or Google's offering, Oracle's offering. There's just so many of those offerings out there right now. Even if you no longer have physical data centers anymore, a lot of our customers find they have more control over their uptime for over two things. Number one, if they're controlling how many zones they've got that stuff in, how many physical data centers they might have that in, whatever the case may be, then they have the ability to duplicate, to provide as many copies of that software as they see fit. Because a premise-based component generally does not have to be in continuous contact with the carrier. It can go ahead and transmit information at end of trailer, transmit information every hour for more of express type services. Because of that, that means that the carrier's back end can be down while you continue to ship. So a lot of customers really love that control. Now, that being said, please note, there is no one size fits all anymore, okay? Especially if you are using same-day delivery services. I don't think very many people are at this point in time, but if you're using same-day delivery services, Deliv, Postmates, DoorDash, something of that nature, those you have to use with an API, okay? So understand that the idea is to strike the balance, to work with a vendor that can bring in the APIs when it's necessary, but provide your bread and butter, the 90+% of your shipments in a way that is actually in a way that provides that control that you want. Okay, and so that's my thought on that one, is understand that there's no one answer. What level of control do you want, and also what level of risk are you willing to take when the carrier's back ends, if the carrier's back ends stop, or more realistically, what we usually see in November and December, slow down. And the fact that they slow down at probably the exact same time that you have the highest volume is usually where many customers are looking to have maybe not all their engines, but some specific engines they rely upon during peak as premise engines, whether that premise is in a physical data center of theirs, whether it's in their virtual data center in a hosting facility, or whether it's in a private cloud provided by the shipping software vendor. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and keep moving here. What is advanced date shopping, and why is it different than regular rate shopping? Tim, you want to cover anything? Because this is a really technical one. I don't know if you want to add any color before I go deep.
I mean, just an intro to the concept. It's all about customer experience, and I think that's what's really. This is a very ProShip specific question, but you know, this is something that we've created in order to allow our customers to give a better customer experience, allow them to compete with the Amazons of the world, which so many of our customers are. So it's definitely a product that our customers drove us to. And Justin, I'll let you kind of explain it from here.
All right. So when you look at rate shopping, at basically service selection over the last 20 years, unfortunately, that's my tenure in the industry. You look at the fact that right around the turn of the century, right in the early 2000s, multi-carrier shipping software was pretty new. And one of the big things it was attempting to do was actually normalize costs from a carrier. I know it sounds unbelievable now, but at the time, figuring out what you were actually going to be charged by the carrier down to the penny was not something everybody expected. Many people were still physically writing out carbonless copies, not knowing what they were going to be charged. They had an estimate, but not knowing what they were going to be charged until they actually got the bill. Okay. So small parcel shipping software in the early 2000s, that's what it brought to the table, late 90s, early 2000s. Okay. And of course, at that point in time, the only thing that you could really rate shop is, yeah, maybe you could rate shop, UPS versus FedEx for their express services. Maybe you could rate shop within a carrier saying, okay, if I want to deliver this next day, can I use the saver service, or do I have to go with the more expensive services? So at the beginning, you just had what we refer to as basic rate shopping, which was usually only used within your express services. Now, I like to say around 2007, it started before that, but by that time, enough of the carriers were providing time in transit for their ground solutions that you can now truly start to rate shop and say, you know what, if my origin is on Staten Island, I can deliver to Manhattan next day with ground. Okay, I don't need to spend the money on an express service to get to that destination. So that's where rate shopping's really started to take off. That ability to truly look and say, the carrier says this will be delivered tomorrow. Prior to that, we had to use things like zones and say, okay, if this is a zone 2, ground could deliver it next day. If it's a zone 3 and it's this carrier, it will be 3-day. If it's zone 3 and it's another carrier, it's going to be 4-day. We had to look at all of those various things that were possibilities there. But after we started getting that good data from the carriers, then it became clean and easy for shipping software vendors that have already gone through the normalization process and provided basic rate shopping in the earlier part of the 2000s. Now, there's one thing about that time in transit, and that time in transit was based off of business days. And if you were ordering something in 2009, 2008, and they said it was going to take 2 days to get there, if you ordered it on a Friday, you weren't expecting it until Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, right? That's you expected that as, business days were Monday through Friday, bankers hours. Actually worse than bankers hours. If you didn't get your order in early enough in the morning, it may not even be processed till the next business day. But as we all know, that is not the expectation that we live in right now. The world we live in right now, if you say 2 days, here we are on a Thursday. If I say this will be delivered in 2 days, customer's going to think it's going to be delivered on Saturday. Okay, so now you actually have to look at all of the various components, what your contracts are. We came up with basically 9 different factors that need to be looked at. It includes rates, it includes the amount of business time in transit from the first 2 methods, but it also looks at things like when you're end of line shipping, because now you have a good expectation as to when it's going to hit a trailer. When you look at when the label is being produced, assuming it's going to make it to that carrier within a matter of minutes, okay, and you can look at the trailers that are available at that location. Mind you, if we're in a store here, we actually look at different things. You want to look at, has a pickup call been made for that carrier today? And if it has, when is the cutoff time to add to the pile before that carrier is expected to show up, right? So you still have these cutoff times that you look at. That's one of the major things that we're looking at. But number 2 is we want to look at, because the carriers don't always have the same thing, what ones are available. So you want to look across all those. If it's late in the day and a carrier has already pulled, and I'm going to go back to the warehouse example here. If, let's say, your UPS trailer has pulled, do you have a pickup day tomorrow? Okay, in reality, tomorrow's Friday. Everybody should have a pickup day. But what if when we're fulfilling it, it is a Friday or a Saturday? Okay, do you have a pickup on Saturday? Do you have a pickup on Sunday? Second part, if it's actually picked up, does that mean it's going to start the transit process? Many of our customers get picked up on a Saturday or Sunday, but those trailers just go into the carrier's induction yard and sit there until processed on Monday. Okay, so that's the second part, is when is the transit days for that service level? And that could be something that's negotiated for each service level, negotiated on the origin level, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and then finally, once that package has fulfilled all of its transit business days, does the carrier actually provide delivery on that day? Now, a great case in point of this is the United States Post Office moves all packages 7 days a week. So if they pick up from you, they're gonna start their transit process. There's only a handful of services that they actually deliver on Sunday, okay? Additionally, we look at what UPS and FedEx announced last year. They would be providing 7-day delivery services, okay? The way that looks like, it is a residential only delivery. So if you are delivering to a commercial address, reference the question that was asked earlier, that service level cannot be used, and therefore you will not get Saturday or Sunday delivery from an express service level that we are aware of at this time. By the way, you can get Saturday delivery for that extra fee, but you will not just get Saturday, Sunday transit and delivery as built into it for commercial express solutions at this point in time. So you have to take all of these things into account. I probably just talked for 4.5, 5 minutes straight about all the various parameters that need to be looked at. The idea is that you want to place that package on the scale or put it across to Panda, get that scan, get the information processed, and get the label for the lowest cost service that will meet or exceed your customer's expectation in under a second. And that is what advanced date shopping is, and how it differs from basic rate shopping and time in transit shopping. Tim, I'm sure I made a mess there. Do you have anything you wanna add to that one at all?
No, I think you hit all the details there, so I think we're good.
Excellent. Let's move to the last early question, and we are going to try to get an extra question in. Does ProShip do address validation? Tim, I'm just going to kind of shortcut this one. We talked a lot about address validation earlier. It is something that most small parcel shipping software will provide. However, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You do need to understand what you're looking for in address validation, residential delivery indicators. Are you just looking for the domestic US? Do you need international? And how many pieces of your enterprise software stack should be involved. You know, your e-commerce suite. If you're importing files from vendors, you should be validating those addresses early. What we always recommend is that you do address validation upstream before that package gets to a scale or before you're doing waiving. Okay, Tim, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that that's the most important part, is doing it as upstream as possible, not to slow down that shipping process on the front end, but also from a cost. If you're evaluating costs as well, there's a lot of providers that charge transactional fees per cleanse and different things like that. If you're doing that at the master level, you're not always doing repeat cleanses for addresses that have already been entered into your database. So again, doing that upstream is typically very important for our customers.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the additional questions. A good one that came up was somebody was asking what percentage of shippers do frontline labels versus end of line labels. And I would say it's not really, saying percentage is not a great way to look at it. It's more of where you are and what you're using in your enterprise software stack. The very large shippers, the ones that are using Oracles and Manhattans and formerly JDA, now Blue Yonder, many of them are used to wave picking, and therefore, in order to minimize the number of touches, they have an inordinate percentage of them that are actually doing front of line shipping at the same time. So as soon as you pick something, you slap a label on it, okay? Makes a lot of sense from a labor standpoint. Whereas smaller shippers, ones who may not be doing 100,000 shipments a day, they're more likely to have been transitioned from something like a World Ship or another standalone end-of-line shipper. They're very likely to be doing end-of-line shipping, and as they grow, they're significantly more likely to put in scan-away, print and apply tunnels, again, also commonly known as pandas. So it really does depend upon which end of the market you're at, when you started growth, as to whether or not there was that automation available to do that touchless scan away, print and apply, connected to a back-end small parcel shipping software that could nearly real time, again, sub-second, apply all your business rules and make that make sense, okay, and produce the appropriate label to meet or exceed customer expectation.
Justin, one thing to note here too is I have a lot of people who approach ProShip because they want the ability to do front of line labels. You know, it seems like a great idea. There's a lot of times where we end up not able to do that. And the reason being is everybody likes the idea, but they don't have the data up front in order to make accurate decisions and produce those labels. So that's one thing to note. I mean, where a package is going to, where it's coming from, what those weights and dimensions, which weight and dimensions are probably the biggest thing that people don't have on the front end because they're waiting for that packer to actually put it in a box and weigh that product at a scale. If that's not something that you can provide on the front end, you're not going to get very accurate rate shopping or anything like that. So it's something to think about. If you want to do front of line labels, do you have the data up front in order to make intelligent decisions in order to produce that label? So like I said, I have a lot of people approach me on that, and then once we start going through it, they realize that they're not actually quite able to do that, or that's not something that they want to do on the front end. So just something to think about.
Okay. And yeah, again, to reiterate that point, to do front of line shipping, you have to do one of two things. You have to have good data in order to get an accurate rate on that, specifically good data on the weight and dimensions, because let's face it, we know where it's coming from, we know where it's going to, and the purpose of small parcel shipping software is to figure out how to ship it that way. But you do need that what information at front of line. Otherwise, you have to do an update later. That's often done with a scanner downstream. And our thing has always been, hey, if you're spending the money on a validation scanner down there, you know, put a little bit more in there to actually do the scan, away, print, and apply at that point in time, because we'll be able to make better decisions, because at that point in time, we have a predictable duration as to when it's actually going to hit the carrier trailer. So we'll know which trailers are still actually available at the time we're producing that barcode. All right, we've got time for one last question here. We are actually gonna, looks like we're gonna use a whole hour. Is rate shopping only comparing carriers? Can you rate shop within the same carrier? Why is it important to have multi-carrier solution? And can you explain the automation of international shipments? Well, this is like 7 questions here. I'm gonna pick it apart and try to do as much of this as we can. Can you rate shop parcel versus LTL if you have multiple locations? How do you rate shop? So let's break this down. First, is rate shopping across only comparing carriers? You know, Tim, you've got a customer in Northern Illinois that they're single, they are a single carrier, yet they rate shop, don't they?
Yeah, we get this question quite a bit. Someone who's let's say they negotiated very good rates with a single carrier, with FedEx, UPS, one of the major carriers, et cetera. A multi-carrier shipping solution can definitely still be a fit. And that example is a perfect example, Justin, where, you know, we see customers who, because an end user of that customer wants the package within 2 days, they're just sending it in express service because that's what the customer is asking for. Where bringing in a multi-carrier shipping solution and allowing that ground versus express service to be compared, and although someone wants it in 2 days, having a solution, a multi-carrier shipping solution, be the expert and say, well, a ground service can actually get there within 2 days. So we've done a lot of deployments where someone has just started with a single carrier and done rate shopping within that carrier. One of the analysis we did with one of our customers that you brought up in Northern Illinois, they actually saved 8% on their freight spend with just a single carrier, just rate shopping within that carrier. So that's something to know. And then one thing I also do want to add, Justin, is I get a lot of people who, when they originally talk with ProShip or they're doing discovery for multi-carrier shipping solutions, is they constantly feel like, well, if I'm rate shopping, I'm really spreading out all my business and I'm going to lose all of my discounts and what I've negotiated, et cetera. And one thing I like to talk about is we want to make sure you achieve those discounts, make sure you achieve of hitting those thresholds and maintaining those relationships with the carriers you want to. So we can actually put different thresholds in place within the system to make sure you're hitting a certain threshold with a carrier to achieve that discount. And then we can open up that rate shop a little bit more. So there's a lot of different things that we can deploy, but you know, just to answer that first part of the question, is there value in rate shopping with the same carrier? There absolutely is. So
yeah, I like your introduction of carrier volume balancing there, that ability to try to keep one or more carriers within a certain spend or package count as necessary. Definitely something that a lot of our customers are looking at lately. We are at the end of the hour though, so I don't think we're going to be able to get to the other parts of that question. If you do feel that you want to hear another of these, you've got more questions for ProShip shipping experts, please feel free, email us, sales@proshipinc.com. You can always find information on our website. We do appreciate everybody who attended today. And of course, we look forward to any feedback. Final reminder, there are a bunch of handouts available which might answer some of your questions. We'd actually love to hear from you on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or via email. Thank you all for attending. Tim, thank you for attending as well.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.